Europe has a long history of turning crisis into capability. Danijel Višević, general partner at World Fund, argues we're at another such moment, where climate, energy, and geopolitical pressure can become a new engine of European innovation. In this talk, we'll focus on what it takes for capital to act with intent, not just conviction. Please welcome Danijel Višević from World Fund.
So I want to take you back into the year 1951. Europe was still in ruins after the most devastating war in human history, but Europeans were not only rebuilding their cities, we've been rebuilding trust. That year, 6 nations signed the Treaty of Paris, creating the European coal and steel community because coal and steel were the backbone of war. By integrating these industries, Europe chose cooperation over conflict. And we today should be aware that this was an act of radical innovation, not just technological, but political, economical, cultural. It worked. Let me share with you a very personal example. So my wife's mother is French, her father is German, a couple unimaginable right after World War II. And fast forward, Sylvie married me, a Croatian, Bosnian, German. Now imagine what our children are. They're just Europeans. Back to 1951. Europe chose cooperation over conflict, so we turned crisis into collaboration. And since then, that has become the European way. We don't break under pressure. We build together. And today, we must do it again. We are now in something what many call the age of polycrisis. A war in Europe, the climate crisis, tech disruption, supply chain fragility, a fragmentation of the global order. That's one way to look at it. But look, this isn't the age of polycrisis. It's the age of opportunity for those who know how to collaborate. And this is Europe's strength, collaboration. Europe has always found strength in crisis. And today's challenges, they're not just tests, they're calls to action. Calls to rethink our economies, to reinvent what European collaboration and sovereignty really mean in the 21st century. Sovereignty today is not just about flags, borders, armies, it's about semiconductors, raw materials, clean energy, data, AI, food systems. But let's face the reality. Europe produces less than 10% of the semiconductors it consumes. We import 98% of our rare earths, 97% of our lithium, 80% of solar panels, and 2/3 of batteries are made in Asia. Let me be even clearer. The tools of the green, digital, and industrial future are being built elsewhere. And if we don't reverse that, Europe risks becoming a spectator in a game it helped invent. We've been here before, and we know how to respond. Remember, when the Berlin Wall fell, we didn't collapse under the weight of integration. We expanded prosperity to more than 100 million people in Central and Eastern Europe. During COVID, Europe launched the 800 billion Next Generation EU Fund. So we didn't just invent the leading vaccine in light speed, the leading vaccine that is called by the Americans Pfizer vaccine, but it was invented by BioNTech, German migrants based in Mainz. So we not only fought COVID, we used this crisis to commit to the green and digital transition like never before. And in the wake of Russia's war in Ukraine, we cut our Russian gas dependency from 40 to only 11% in under 2 years. So that's an industrial transformation in real time. So when the stakes are high, Europe doesn't just respond, it reinvents. We reinvent ourselves. And today we must act again. And this time our challenge is to build resilience through investment. But how, given this data? Over the last decade, Europe raised 7 times less venture capital than the United States. Only 15% of European climate tech startups reach Series B funding. In the US, it's 25%. And that funding gap since 2015 is per year over 2.7 billion euros in missed scale-up capital. Here's the hopeful part. Data show that we are picking up, and Europe has extraordinary companies ready to lead. I'll just mention 3 examples. And yes, full disclosure, those 3 companies are companies World Fund, so we invested in. Scilib is turning battery waste into the raw materials we need by recovering more than 90% of the critical minerals. IQM from Finland is selling more quantum computers than any other quantum company in the world. Planet A Foods from Germany is replacing cacao with climate-resilient European crops. So they are disrupting one of the most vulnerable and deforestation-linked supply chains in the world. And these are not just scale-ups. These companies are growing to become the pillars of European sovereignty, and they're not alone. What we need is bold policy, and it's on the way. You heard that. What we also need is ambitious scale-up capital. It's also on its way. We need public-private partnerships that amplify the opportunity in the making. So, good science, but above all, we need a shared mission to invest in those critical technologies that serve European values, that serve European resilience, and recreate our leadership. This is not a time for hesitation, it's a time for movement, missions, and moonshots. Let's create hundreds of companies like Scilib, IQM, and Planet A Foods. Let's make Europe not only the continent of innovation, but the continent of industrial scale. I began with the year 1951, when Europe, devastated by war, chose to build peace by binding coal and steel. Europeans decided on collaboration, and that act of radical innovation reshaped the future and made my own European family possible. And we've done this again and again. We responded to the old crisis with wind and sun. We responded to a divided continent with unity and to a pandemic with the largest green stimulus in our history. So the story of Europe is not one of stagnation, it's one of reinvention. We know how to turn crisis into collaboration and competitiveness. But the next chapter isn't written yet. It depends on whether we choose to lead again, to choose to invest, to collaborate, to believe. So remember, Europe doesn't break under pressure because we build together. Now's the time to do this again. Thank you.